mutaneous energy plasmas. Obakova's crew, yeah. Obakova called up the black mutant and said, "If you want us so bad, then come down here and get us." The black mutant sat back in his throne evilly and shouted, "I will, and when I do, I will torture you to death." Jack said to the black mutant, "Hey, black moron, I bet you won't be able to get me." I thought that was really funny watching Burrito push your head down into that mess heap. The green screen went out and the black mutant yelled with fury. Every word he could get out was a cuss word. He ordered half of his robot crew to come and beam down with him onto the planet. And down on the planet, Newton's crew looked depressed. They knew it was hopeless to hide from the black mutant. And they didn't have any weapons to stop him. Newton's crew walked out into the forested area of the planet and looked at Newton's grave that was under an oak tree. Obakova said, "I don't know about you, but I sure wish Newton was with us now. He was the only one that could defeat the terrible black mutant." Newton's crew looked at the grave of Newton with 5 others from the planet. It was one in the afternoon, and the planet's fall air was cool. Jack watched the sun through the tree leaves and knew that the black mutant was now rampaging through the city in search of them with his mindless robot crew. Shirley said glumly, "I sure miss Newton. I bet that if he were here right now, he would destroy the black mutant. It's too bad he can't come back from the dead like the way he used to when he would go back in time." Suddenly one of the people looked like he was thinking of something very inspirational. "I've got it," he shouted. "What?" everybody asked. "I know how we can bring Newton back to life." How?" everybody asked. "We can make a clone of him, like we do to animals and other things." "A clone?" Shirley laughed. "I'm a scientist. I have kept some of Newton's mutated blood. With his blood we could grow him up just the way he was before he died." With his blood, we could, with his blood, we couldn't be like, he wouldn't be like all the other clones. Newton's a mutant, and he would be very easy to clone because of his mutation. His clone would be him. It would have his same looks, same thoughts, same humor, and same everything except limbs. "How long would it take to create Newton?" asked Jack. "Well, with our technology, it would take an hour. It's not like it was back in the 21st century. Newton's clone will be him." And they all started back to the city. An hour later, the black mutant had caught Shirley and had chained her up in the White House. The black mutant was trying to make her tell where the others were, but she wouldn't tell, no matter how much he tortured her. The black mutant ran out onto the lawn of the planet's White House. And shouted, "I'll get you." Meanwhile, back in the laboratory, the scientist was working at the control panels to make an instant Newton. There was a big fish-like aquarium filled with dark red water that had so many bubbles in it that they couldn't see what was going on in it. The scientist put some artificial arms and legs into the bubbling water, and then put a spacesuit into it also. Then he activated a ray gun that shot a strange ray down into the water. All of Newton's crew looked in wonder at the strange incident. "It's just about ready," said the scientist excitedly. Suddenly, the black mutant crashed down the door of the laboratory and yelled, "What's going on in here?" His robot crew marched in and pointed their phasers at the scientist and the people in the room. Jack Obakova and Sonia ducked down and hid behind a control panel. The scientist lied. I am making a clone of some algae. That way we can feed the planet's population better. The Black Mutant shouted, that better be it. I wouldn't want you to be cloning around for nothing. Cloning around for nothing? Oh well. Then the mutant and his robots left the room. The scientist quickly shut off the ray and the bubbles died down. Newton's crew got up from behind the control panel with great relief and said, boy, that was a close one. Is Newton done yet? He should be, the scientist explained. The five walked up to the stairs and looked down into the murky red water. I don't see anything, said Sonia. Me neither. Me neither, agreed Obakova, thinking the cloning was just another mess-up. Suddenly they all saw something white, like something glowing. They thought it was a reflection. Then suddenly Newton's hand rose up out of the murky red water and grabbed a hold of the aquarium. Then another hand appeared and grabbed onto the rim. Newton pulled himself up and spit out the weird water. Sonia and one of the guys fainted with disbelief. Newton stood up with a puzzled look on his face and said with wonder, where am I? How did I get here? Did I die and go to heaven? I hope. Newton was clothed with and everything. He looked like he did 3 years ago. When actually he died over a month ago. Do you know your name? Asked the scientist. That's Newton. I am the captain and ruler of Mutania. But how did I get here? I must have died and gone somewhere. The Black Mutant killed me with that anti-radiation sword. An hour passed, and after the scientist and Newton's crew told Newton about everything, he couldn't believe that he was a clone. The scientist said, you are a clone, and you must not do anything too physical for the next couple of days, or you will age rapidly and die. Another hour passed, and Newton accepted the fact that he was a clone, even though he didn't want to. In the morning, the Black Mutant still hadn't found the rest of Newton's crew, but had captured Sonia now. Sonia wouldn't tell, and she got the same treatment Shirley got. And out in the forested area of the planet, Obakova and Jack showed Newton his grave. Here's your grave, Newton. This is where you were buried a month ago. Newton looked down at his grave like he just saw a ghost and said, this is my grave. Yes, Obakova said. And your body is buried down there in a casket. I know it's a lousy-looking grave. We couldn't give you a fancy tomb or a golden gravestone because no one really had the time with this horrible thing hanging over our heads. Newton looked really shook up and looked at the gravestone that read, here lies Newton, a fine mutant. Then it had a big thing on his history and told when he was born and when he died. Newton crossed out the date and put the real date down. He then said, I think I would have had a nervous breakdown if I dug myself up and found something eating it. Newton stepped back and asked, where is the Black Mutant? I've got to get my revenge on him for doing this to me. Obakova said, he's in the White House. But remember, Newton, don't fight him. You're not completely yourself yet. Where's Sonia and Shirley? He asked again. Jack and Obakova didn't want to tell him because Newton would go off and try to fight the Black Mutant and get them. And if he did, the Black Mutant might weaken Newton and cause him to age rapidly. Jack was afraid Newton might hurt him from not telling him, so he said, "The Black Mutant's got them." "Thanks," said Newton, and he flew back to the city. When he landed, the people flocked around about Newton, knowing that he was going to kill the Black Mutant. The word got secretly around, and the Black Mutant didn't know that Newton was alive again. That was until he heard the crowds in the city. Newton stood out on the lawn of the White House and shouted, "Okay, Mutant, come out here and be destroyed." The Black Mutant just couldn't believe that Newton was alive again. "You come up here and get me," shouted the mutant as he ran to get his anti-radiation sword. The Black Mutant was frightened, but he hid it by acting cool. Newton walked around the White House with the crowd following him. Newton stopped in the back of the building and looked at all the people who were cheering him and talking him on to killing the Black Mutant. "I will," shouted Newton, "no matter how old I get." He kicked down the back door, and found himself in a big room with rows of seats. Probably the place where the president used to talk, thought Newton. Suddenly all the Black Mutant's robots ran into the room to attack Newton. Newton defended himself well, as usual, and fought off the robots like they were mechanical rag dolls. Newton kicked them here and threw them there, shattering their heads with strong punches, causing sparks and electrical fires to spring out of them. Obakova and Jack loved the battle. It really made them feel good to see Newton destroy the robots that tortured them for the past weeks. A few minutes passed and all 15 of the Black Mutant's robots were destroyed. Everybody was cheering. Newton stood up and brushed himself off and said, "Now to kill the Black Mutant." Obakova and some others burst out saying, "Newton, you better not. You have gray sideburns." The Black Mutant was listening to them in the other room. Obakova warned, "Newton, I think you better quit, or you will age rapidly, and the Black Mutant will kill you." Newton looked a little discouraged, but said, "I don't care how old I get. The Black Mutant could never take me. He just got lucky the last time from a cheap shot, and I'm going to save Sonia and Shirley." Suddenly the Black Mutant leaped out onto the balcony and shouted, "So you're a clone who will age quickly if it fights me, eh?" "I'm not an it," shouted Newton angrily. "Yes, you are, it. Take this." The Black Mutant started throwing things down at Newton from the balcony to make Newton use up his youth energy. By dodging the heavy debris the mutant was tossing down at him. Now Newton had wrinkled eyes and gray in front of his forehead. "How's that, old man?" laughed the Black Mutant. Newton quit dodging the debris. The Black Mutant leaped over the balcony rails and fell 30 feet to the floor and landed 10 feet from Newton. Newton looked 10 years older. "Get him, Newton," the crowd shouted. The Black Mutant became excited and began to taunt the aging Newton. The mutant laughed and started shouting, "Hit me, Newton. Hit. Come on. What's the matter? You scared of something?" The Black Mutant laughed, trying to make Newton fight. and he hit Newton across the face, knocking Newton to the floor. Newton got up slowly to conserve his energy. "Ha ha," laughed the Black Mutant, and he kicked Newton into the crowd. The people looked upset. "Ha ha, boy, do you look like a clone." "Clone?" The mutant laughed, then taunted with, "Come on, quit cloning around and fight me." He leaped on Newton and started punching and kicking Newton around on the floor. "No," shouted the people with frighteningly. The mutant said with a laugh as he punched Newton out, "Boy, am I making a clone out of you." Suddenly, Newton threw the Black Mutant off and went wild with fury. The crowd cheered. Newton was using all of his might on the mutant by slugging and punching the mutant all around the room. Newton leaped and kicked the Black Mutant through the wall, then knocked him furiously around in the White House kitchen. The Black Mutant was totally defenseless as Newton connected with strong punches to the mutant's body, face, and head. Newton got the mutant up against the wall and punched him until he didn't have any energy. The Black Mutant fell on Newton and just hung onto Newton's neck as Newton punched into its midsection. Newton blasted the Black Mutant off of him, knocking it up against the wall and almost through the wall. The Black Mutant didn't even look the same anymore. His face was flat and pulpy, the same with his body, and yellow mutated blood was pouring out all over him. It was pouring out of him all over. Newton quit his attack and stepped back. The Black Mutant slid down the wall and fell onto the floor unconscious. It was quite out of it. Ruff, 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 ruff. It was quite out of it. Newton didn't know if it was dead or not. But he didn't care because now he was totally gray. And looked like an old man in his 70s. An hour later, and Newton had freed his crew, and the universe was celebrating. But when Newton walked into the kitchen, the Black Mutant was gone. The Black Mutant wasn't there. Sonia looked frightened and said, "Newton, where could he be?" Newton looked like a scared old man and said, "I don't know, but I better get him soon before he heals back to normal and kills me." Suddenly they heard the Black Mutant laughing in the Senate room. Newton walked in. The afternoon sunlight was filtering through the windows. Newton saw a glowing sword appear, then dart down the hall of the White House. Newton followed it. It was the Black Mutant with a glowing red-colored anti-radiation sword. "I'm down here, old clone," he called to Newton. Newton found a brown robe laying on the floor and put it on. And put it on to hopefully take the Black Mutant by surprise. Newton also took out his phaser and followed the voice that was taunting him. A few minutes later, just a minute. A few minutes later, Newton found himself in the White House cellar with a few lights running down the walls. The cellar looked like a hallway. Newton found a blue glowing colored anti-radiation sword laying on the floor of the cellar. Newton picked it up. The brown robe that he wore made him look like a kind of like a look kind of made him look like a kind of Latin American padre. Suddenly, Newton heard a noise and turned around. It was the Black Mutant, dressed up in a black cape with a black helmet. He had his red glowing anti-radiation sword in his hand, and he said, as he stood 10 feet from Newton, "Newton, you have returned. I was hoping you wouldn't show up. I was hoping you'd show up. I must admit this. In the beginning, you were the master. Now I am master." Newton put his hood over his old mutated head and got ready, shouting, "You're nothing but a master of evil, Doug." And the two mutants began dueling it out with the swords. Every time the swords would clash together, they would flash like lightning and sparks of electricity would shoot out of them. Newton spun around and ripped the Black Mutant's cape, knocking the Black Mutant up against the wall. The Black Mutant bounced back and cut Newton's sleeve. Then Newton cut the Black Mutant's artificial arm and shoved the mutant up against the wall again. There was suddenly a big cheer because the people were watching it down the hall. Newton slashed the Black Mutant's other arm. Sparks and electrical fires began springing up out of it. The mutant got a frightened look on its face. 2 minutes passed, and the Black Mutant got its leg slashed from a quick move of Newton. "Yay!" cheered the crowd on both sides of the cellar now. "You're getting tired, old clone," replied the Black Mutant. Newton looked like he had aged 20 more years from the fight. "I'm still winning, mutant," Newton countered back, and he shoved the mutant back again. Suddenly a terrifying thing was happening. Newton's sword was losing its glow. A minute passed, and it looked like a regular piece of metal, and Newton looked like an old man past 100. "Stop, Newton, stop," begged the people sadly, "or we'll have to put you in a home." "What did you say, kidsies?" Newton sounded like a shaky old man. Suddenly the Black Mutant sliced Newton across the chest, then cut his shoulder. Sparks began to spring up out of Newton's artificial limbs, and Newton was getting scraped by the Black Mutant's sword. Now Newton's face was all shriveled like a prune, and his hair was completely white and thinning fast. He looked unreal. He was so old now. The Black Mutant laughed evilly and said with an evil grin, "Come on, old man. Come on, old man. Hit me." Laughed the Black Mutant to the shaky old Newton, and he began booting and kicking the confused old shaky Newton around. The people couldn't bear to watch what the Black Mutant was doing to their only hope. It was embarrassing and humiliating. Newton's artificial limbs began to loosen up as they shriveled from old age. His teeth fell out, and he looked like a skeleton with dried out skin on bone. The Black Mutant began to throw little humiliating punches into the confused old Newton's face. "No!" shouted the people with despair. The Black Mutant laughed as Newton staggered about like a living corpse. The mutant began to pat Newton on his shiny white bald head. The Black Mutant looked about evilly and saw a man in the crowd with thick glasses. The Black Mutant laughed, asked the question, "I shouldn't hit anyone with glasses, should I?" He punched the man with glasses, took off his glasses, and put them on Newton. He began patting Newton on the head and booting him around again. The people moaned to see what was happening to their only hope. The Black Mutant laughed and asked, "What's the matter? It looks as though your hero wants to retire." The Black Mutant raised his sword over his head, gave Newton a few quick pats on the head, then swung the sword around. Newton's crew and a few of the people screamed when they saw Newton's head roll down the hall. Newton was dead again. Now there were 2 graves of Newton. Newton's crew quickly escaped while the Black Mutant glorified himself. Everyone was shocked and totally discouraged. It looked like the end of them, but the scientist who produced the first Newton clone produced more of them. The Black Mutant was fighting with them constantly. Every corner the Black Mutant turned, the a Newton clone would be there to attack him. The Black Newton was constantly blowing the Newton clones away with his anti-radiation machine gun. Although it was killing the Newton clones, the clones were making a nervous wreck out of the Black Mutant. The Black Mutant ran around the city looking for the scientist who was producing them, but they were constantly moving their whereabouts. Son of the Black Mutant was attacked by 8 Newton clones. The Black Mutant killed them all with the last anti-radiation bullets. He didn't have any more weapons to use to kill the clones. He would have to kill them with his own strength, which was very unlikely. The Black Mutant began to flip out. His face was all disfigured from the constant struggle. He began screaming in the streets and laughing hysterically. The Black Mutant took off down the streets and ran into a storage house for a place to hide. His luck had suddenly turned when he found the laboratory to the Newton clones. The doctor who was the cause of them was working at the control panel. Sonia and Shirley were watching, and Obakoba and Jack were getting ready to put a blood cell of Newton into the water to make another Newton. Jack laughed and said, "That Black Mutant is losing the battle. If the clones don't get him, then the stress will." The scientist yelled, "Quick, we must make more Newtons, because the mutant has just killed the last 5. Son of the Black Mutant jumped out into the open and shouted, terrifying the others, "And you're not going to make any more instant Newtons." He picked up a wrench and threw it at the big aquarium, shattering the glass, and making the precious supernatural clone-making water spill out onto the floor. After doing that, he ran to the table and picked up the flask that contained Newton's blood, the only substance that could make more Newtons. "Now there will be no more clones called Newton. When I shatter this, you will shout, 'Bring on the clones.' But there will be no more, just as you will soon be." So the Black Mutant got a devilish smile on his evil-looking face. Then he threw the flask to the ground and started laughing as he began jumping on the flask that had shattered to pieces on impact. The mutant laughed with joy as he began jumping on the flask that had shattered to pieces. The mutant laughed with joy as he stomped Newton's blood into the dirt. The dirt became an ugly orange color as the mutant shuffled his feet through the dirt. Newton's crew looked depressed and sickened to see the mutant destroying their chances of freedom. The Black Mutant leaped back and pointed his phaser at the bloody ground. He pressed the trigger. The phaser beam shot out and put a hole in the ground 1 foot deep and 5 feet in diameter. Newton would never be around again. He was gone for good. "Come here, Jack," the Black Mutant ordered. "I'm going to do the same thing to you as I did to Newton." Jack knew what the Black Mutant was going to do, so he started walking away. The mutant caught him and started throwing him around in the storage room. Jack was being slammed up against the walls and thrown over storage. He was also being punched and kicked. "Help me," he yelled out with terror as the mutant started shoving his head into the wood wall. Obakoba picked up a pitchfork and